stand out. You can't stand it. I stand up for mine. You can't stand it. Please
Okay, like I said at the onset of the show, I got a real esteemed guest. There's really no introduction necessary. If you're from Cleveland, Ohio, and if you don't know who this gentleman is, you probably gonna need to go back under your rock. You're probably no good to the rest of us in society, you know. But we have the Honorable Mayor Frank G. Jackson right here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
3 terms in office, man. That's one heck of accomplishment. Only achieved what? Michael White was the last one to do it?
That's correct.
Wow. But I want to take it back to the beginning, you know, Mr. Jackson, because you had humble beginnings coming up. A lot of people don't know you're from the central neighborhoods in Kinsman area.
Yeah, I was born on 83rd and Kinsman, and then in 1960, my family moved on 38th and Central, where I live now.
Okay. Where you live now?
Where I live now.
Ah, how you like that?
You know, you know, I remember people say, you know, he can't be living there. Must live in Shaker somewhere. And he just gets dropped off in the middle of the night. He slip out, you know. But no, I stay on 38th and Central.
Now, hold on. It's got to be a reason why you didn't move. You've been in term now 3 times. You've been in office for 3 terms. You could have went anywhere in the city and been greeted with open arms, I assume. Why stay in the hood?
Because it's my home. You know, I'm like I say, my family's been there since 1960, and I've went through all of what young kids go through, African American kids go through. I remember when I graduated from high school, I was almost 20 years old. I graduated.
Max Hayes?
Max Hayes. I graduated. Now, I would have went to East Tech, but Max Hayes back then was a trade school, like a magnet school, and I wanted to learn a trade. So I graduated, and I was so old that they drafted me in the Army.
What was your position in the Army? Where were you in the Army, a grunt?
Yeah, I was. Well, I went in as private. My highest rank was an E4, which would be like a corporal, 2 stripes. But I had to prove to them that I was still in high school, so they let me go. But in June, when I graduated, October, I was in the Army. Oh, man. I was in the Army, and I did my tour, went to Vietnam, come back, and then ran around in the streets for a while. And then when I was about 27 years old, I went to community college.
It ain't never too late, baby.
No.
You hearing it from the mayor right here. Now, let me ask you, though,
Yeah.
Mayor Frank, because growing up in those beginnings down there in that area, what were the circumstances and the conditions that allowed you to become who you are today? And are those same conditions and circumstances still there? And if not, how can we replicate them?
Well, first of all, I had good parents. And then secondly, people looked out for me when I wasn't looking out for myself. And so a lot of times, like I remember I was racking ball in the pool room. I was about 16 years old. And it wasn't a family pool room; it was hustling pool room, and so the police would come in and put me out now and then. But I learned a lot from the street dudes that were there, and they would always give me advice as to what to do and not do, and to how to handle this and how to handle that. And so I just learned. I just listened and I learned. And from that, when it came time for me making decisions, I knew what I didn't want to do. Even if I didn't know what I wanted to do, I knew I wasn't doing that, right? And so when I wound up going to Tri-C at 27, I had to take remedial courses over because I could read or write, but I couldn't read or write in a way that I could write a college paper or pass a college course.
You made one heck of a jump, one heck of a leap, right? Yeah.
Well, and see, and that's that common sense street stuff that gets you by. That's right. Because I learned eventually I learned how to translate the books, even though the books were in English. I had no clue what they were talking about, and I had to translate it into a language I understood. And when I did that, I know that. Right. I know that, and from that, with the tenacity that I learned from being out there, I was able to plug my way through, and I wound up with the Associate's, Bachelor's, Master Law degree. Again, not intending to do any of it.
You in the military and you got out, you ran the streets for a little bit.
Yeah, for a little bit. Sometimes better
so
lucky than good.
So what happened to say, you know what, I'm tired of this, I got to switch it up?
I got married.
What did you get mad? What did you get mad at?
I married.
Oh, you got married.
I got married.
I thought he got mad. You get mad at that too.
Well, I acquired responsibility. Okay. You know, me and my wife met, and we lived together for a while, and then in 1975 we got married, and so now I got a responsibility. You know, I got a wife, I got a kid, I got all of that, and I began to look at things differently. And besides, I was just tired of that stuff, man. I ain't had no more time. I didn't have time for that. It was nothing there.
Now, City Councilman, was it true that Lonnie Burton kind of influenced you to go into politics?
Well, Lonnie Burton was a friend. I helped him out because he was a friend of mine. He was. When we moved on 30th Central in 1960, he and his family were already there, and he befriended me, and so we just became friends. And when he was running for council in '75, he was running for council. I just helped him because he was a friend. Oh, okay. So I learned the trade of campaigning by just helping him. I would. Pass out literature, hang up signs, knock on doors with him. You know, I was his grunt man. In the trenches. Yeah, I was a grunt man. Yeah. And so he'd be talking to somebody. Like my job. Yeah, and I'd be the one, if they weren't registered to vote, I'd register them. Or if there was someone talking about something, I was the one that would be in his ear a little bit later. Hey, you remember this, that. So all I was doing was serving him.
Were you forming your mayor's ear then, listening to the people?
Oh, no, I had no intent to be a councilman or council president or mayor. It was never my ambition. You know, I know a lot of people have, they want to be something, and then they do what they need to do, take all those steps to do it, which is fine. Me, on the other hand, I never had an ambition to be anything. I just flow. I just go with it. But the one thing that I always believed in, though, and I learned this from the street, is that you always had to be ready for whatever presented itself. You had to be prepared, and I learned that from the street, because you never know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or how. So you had to always be ready, and so I gravitated towards education as a way of being ready. And so when opportunities presented themselves, then what I did, I just moved into that opportunity. I didn't want to be a councilman. I didn't want to be elected official. Yeah. You know, Lonnie, he died in office. He was a young man. He was 39, 40 years old. And when he died in office, we picked his successor, me and a friend of mine, picked his successor, and then we went on about our business. But things weren't working out right, and we were trying to find somebody to run, and it wound up being me.
I like those apples.
Right.
So hold on. So looking at the landscape, saying
right.
Who can we find to address these
right.
issues, and then all of a sudden it started becoming clear. Why not me?
No, that's not what happened.
Okay, what happened?
Now I'm going to tell you the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is that we looked at Republicans, Democrats, we looked at everybody. And we were trying, and so my friend, David, he was telling me, he said, man, he said, you got to do this, you got to do this. I said, man, I am not doing that. I ain't got time for that, right? And so we talking. So it got to a point that a decision had to be made. Decision had to be made. Now, we out there doing our advocacy work, and we out there doing whatever we doing. And so he says to me, he said, look, you got to do this. I said, I'm not doing it. He said, okay, that's fine. He said, you don't have to do it. But he said, I guarantee you he won't sit in that seat again, win or lose. So I said, I guess I'm running then, huh?
Because you couldn't leave it up to chance.
No, I couldn't leave it up to him to do what he was going to do. You understand? And so I said, fine, I'm going. You have to remember, David was, he was your best friend or he was your worst enemy.
Why?
There wasn't no.
He gave it to you straight.
No, because he was out of penitentiary and
gave it to you straight.
right. So he had a strong affinity to people who were underdogs and a strong adversity to bullies.
Well, let me ask you. Okay, so you made it to city council.
Right.
You really didn't have no idea to do this, but now you're sitting in this
I'm
seat.
there.
And now coming from the hood, and you know the challenges
Right.
that's faced in the community.
Right.
And now, so how is that dynamic? Knowing what's going on in the hood, and now you're actually in position to have some kind of say.
And that's the key, because everybody can talk a good game. The question becomes, when the time comes, can you do what you need to do? And for me, the position of councilman, just like the position of council president or mayor, doesn't mean anything to me in holding it, because I wasn't that or what I am now because I want to say I'm mayor or I want to say I'm a councilman. It became a tool. See, it's a tool that you use in order to get something done.
Oh!
See, because look, I'd say I'm out there being an advocate. I'm running off at the mouth about stuff, and everybody might, every once in a while you get amen here or there, but ain't nobody gonna do anything about it because they don't have to do anything about it. But once you get into positions of authority and power and influence, then they got to deal with you. So my conversation hasn't changed from then to now. It hasn't changed. But what has happened is the positions I've began to hold has given me the ability to use those positions as a tool to advance whatever it is.
Well, that speaks testament. Yeah, that speaks volumes with you being in office as long as you have. And in the beginning, you brought millions of dollars to Ward 5.
Well, Ward 5 is, I'm old enough to remember the tail end of segregation, and when we couldn't go anywhere, and everybody come out of Central, Congressman Stokes, Mayor Stokes, many judges, Judge Capers, a lot of people came out of Ward 5, and many of them came out of the projects, right? Well, gentlemen gangsters, they were gentlemen gangsters, and so what happened was, as they came out, and as this thing around fair housing happened, and this integration happened, it really calls for the demise of communities like Central, because when you put the ride in, then you put in redlining where you couldn't get any money. They wouldn't loan any money into those areas. They redlined the area. And then when you got urban renewal, which came in and demolished the area, so all the commercial strips going, so all you got is vacant land. And then like with my family, you got your house here and all the vacant land. Then you got the poorest of poor in public housing. Now anybody who could have, all the other people were gone. People who worked at LTV, now their children became professional people. People who worked at the post office. But there was a house on every lot. There was businesses all up and down the street. And so what I looked at is when I was doing my thing as councilman is how to restore that, how to bring that back, because I had a whole different concept of Central, contrary to the way people saw it then. I saw it the way it was.
Mr. Jackson rose through the ranks as city council, where you brought in the excess of hundreds of millions of dollars to your ward.
Yes.
I want to ask you, though, coming from the neighborhood, coming from the community, the inner city, how were you able to balance the concerns of voters and constituents outside of your area?
Well, whenever you're a councilman, all you concerned about was who you represent. And it's just like being a lawyer. You may understand the other person's point of view, the other side's point of view, but it ain't your job to represent that. So what I did, I just represented Central. That's it. And it's very narrow, very focused. The poorest of the poor live in Central. Over half of public housing in the county was in Central. We had Longwood, Rainbow Terrace wasn't public housing, subsidized housing. So that's what I represented. So everything I did was to represent their interests. And now when I became council president, then I had a broader constituency because I had the responsibility of ensuring that all of the council people's issues got taken care of in their ward. And now as mayor, I represent the entire city of Cleveland. And it's a very diverse city from the far west to the far east, the northeast to southeast. And so you have different, it's very diverse in terms of race, income, agendas, conditions, all these things. And in order to be an effective mayor, you have to have the ability to understand that dynamic and have the ability and the competency to govern in that way.
Now, when you ran in 2005, Mayor, you were real critical of Mayor Jane Campbell paying a lot of attention to downtown instead of the inner city neighborhoods. Now you're catching some of that same flack and criticism.
I was never critical of her of that. No, that is what, see, who's there talking about the lie? I heard in the monologue, who's there talking about the lie? You know, and if you don't counter the lie with the truth, it's going to stand, right?
Okay, straighten me out.
That's right. Because, and I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about those who have the agenda. Because I never my criticism of Mayor Campbell was that what the straw that broke the camel's back there is that I had worked out an agreement with the unions, the building trades, to allow our kids into the building trades, and that whenever we were doing construction activity where the city had significant investments in it, that 20% of the work hours had to go to Cleveland residents. I couldn't say black or white because, you know why? Because people think that because of the civil rights movement, you can say you can do set-asides for blacks. You can't do that. That's stuff against the law now. You have to say Clevelanders. And so if you lived in Clevelanders, 20% of all the work hours was guaranteed to Clevelanders. Well, what she did is she entered into a couple of agreements with some people and waived that. Well, what you talking about waiving that? You can't do that. And so I thought that was disingenuous. Now, I ain't in the business to deceive the people. And so that's where her and I are part of the company. I had no problem with downtown development, and I don't have a problem with it now. It's because that when I first became mayor in 2006, people were talking about what you gonna do about downtown. We can roll a bowling ball down Euclid and don't touch a soul. You know what I mean? And so now it's the other way around. So my point is that I was never against. They did the same thing to Mayor White. I was never against that. What I was against is when you don't have equity in what you're doing. And what I was attempting to do was to ensure, as we were doing things, that the people of Cleveland benefited from it. Just like in Central when I was a councilman. I didn't mind people building homes, but, people got to benefit from it, right? I didn't mind public housing getting renovated, but people had to benefit from it. So I always say that if people don't support me, that becomes their choice, but it won't be based on a lie.
Oh, but why do you think Zach Reed's agenda is not right at this time for the city?
Because, how long you been doing this?
13 years.
13 years. I've been doing mine as mayor for 12. Okay. Now, somebody come along and say, hey, man, you've been doing this for 13 years. It's time for you to just move aside. Aside. Let a rookie come in. Let a rookie come in. Well, you know what? That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Because, first of all, you have to earn this stuff. This stuff is not given. You have to earn this stuff. And I'm pretty sure in your 13 years, you didn't just pop up one day. You put the work in. Put the work in. Well, and so what has to happen, if we are an urban center, this is a city. This is not Mayberry. And so we have significant problems. And if you're going to deal with the problems that we have and be able to continue the progress that we've made, then you have to be able to handle that and deal with it. And so that is the difference in terms of his candidacy and mine. Because I think I've demonstrated not only in what was considered the most troubled ward in the entire northeastern Ohio and rebuilding that, I was demonstrated by rebuilding the city that was considered the backwater of the world. You see? And then what good would come out of Cleveland? And so that's what the conversation was. Just like they say, what good come out of Central? And so we were able to do that. We were able to do that, but that didn't happen because I had a good conversation about it. That happened because I put the work in. I earned it, and I gained the experience from putting that work in. So now I am able to carry it over to the finish line.
Makes sense, huh?